Well, with the Leafs missing the playoffs for the very first time in my look back into why the Leafs have not won a Stanley Cup since 1967, doesn't exactly mean I should just skip over the most important part of the season, and that is the playoffs for the Stanley Cup. So I'm going to do that for the 1968 NHL playoffs now. Um, what I'm going to do from here on, like this is generally what I'm doing anyways, but the Leafs are not in the playoffs, so become much more apparent, is I will grab on to the Stanley Cup winner right in the opening round and follow their follow their path until they get to kiss the Golden Grail there, get the Stanley Cup, and look at each series that they play. So in the 1968 NHL playoffs, we still have the number one seeded team playing the number three and two playing four. That's still going on. Um, we will certainly get to a point here at some point. I don't remember exactly when, but where the playoff structure makes more sense to me. One and four and two and three. We'll get to that at some point here. Um, but right in the first round, we're going to jump into a series that has some true hockey rivals like Montreal and Toronto, and as that is the Montreal Canadiens. And it won't be the Leafs this year, but it's going to be the Boston Bruins. I remember these two teams playing quite often when I was a kid. I would be cheering for Boston every time. They rarely did beat them through their history. It was usually Montreal that came out on top, but they played in the opening series as the Habs took the top spot in the East and the Bruins were at number three. So big props to the Bruins as they had made some huge improvements and moved themselves into that number three spot after they were, I believe, in sixth the previous season. As I mentioned in a video looking at the season, Phil Esposito had 35 goals for the Bruins. Johnny Busick had 30, so they had two 30-goal guys. And then after that, the Bruins had five 20-goal scorers. So John McKenzie had 28, Ken Hodge had 25, Derek Sanderson had 24, Eddie Shack, who I would have kept in Toronto, he had 23, and Freddie Stanfield, he had 20. So you got seven 20 goal scorers. That's very effective, good offense. Now, there are a number of guys that have should keep their eyes on while on the ice and know where they are. So you have Don Awrey. He led the league with 153 penalty minutes. And there's two other defensemen, Ted Green and Gary Doak as well. Up front, there was McKenzie and Shack who could put the puck in the net as well. But those were some aggressive dudes as well. In net for Boston, I'm sorry, was Jerry Cheevers and Eddie Johnston. I do think if the Habs or if Boston is going to advance to the second round, get past the Habs here in the first round, they're going to need to get better goaltending or better defensive styled hockey. Cheevers had a save percentage of 907, and Johnston's was 897 against the high flying Montreal squad. They're going to need to get better in that department, I believe. Now, looking at Montreal, Jean Beliveau had 31 goals. After that, Montreal had their own clicking offense as they had 520 goal scorers as well. So you have Yvon Cornway, he had 28. Former Leaf Dick Duff, he had 25. Gilles Tremblay had 23. And can I call this guy underrated? I think he was a little bit. I think rookie Jacques Lemaire, he had 22, and Ralph Backstrom, he had 20. John Ferguson was still sweeping around the Montreal Forum ice, and a dude to watch out for. Very tough guy. Montreal still had high quality goaltending after the expansion draft. Yes, they lost Charlie Hodge to the Oakland Seals, but they still had Gump Worsley with his 922 save percentage and a youngster 22-year-old Rogie Vachon with his 913 save percentage. So there we go. We got Montreal and Boston in the opening round. So for the series, the opener was, of course, at the Montreal Forum. Claude Provost scored the game winner with just over 5 minutes left in the third. So late goal there. The Habs skated away with a 2-1 win. Cheevers did his job though. He made 35 saves, and Worsley made 21. In game two, Jacques Lemaire had 2 goals, and Montreal won 5-3. After losing the first 2 games in Montreal, Boston is going to have to dig in for game three on home ice at the Boston Garden. Montreal, though, took a stranglehold as Ralph Backstrom scored the game winner and had an assist, and they took a 5-2 win. So the lead in goals is increasing every game here. Montreal is really clicking here. Worsley had 25 saves for the win. With their backs against the wall, Boston tried to fight back, but Backstrom again, he scored the game winner with less than 4 minutes left in the game. Ken Hodge, after that, he did score for Boston, but it wasn't enough as Montreal won 3-2. Worsley made 35 saves, and Montreal skated off with a first round sweep of the Boston Bruins. Boy, oh boy, they are looking for blood here. The Montreal is clicking. Didn't lose a game in the opening round to the Boston Bruins. So Chicago in the other East Division first round, they eliminated the New York Rangers, who were in second place. So Chicago, I don't know how much of a surprise that was. Chicago had some excellent players like Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita. Um, so it was Chicago facing off against Montreal in the semifinals. So we now have 3 rounds in the playoffs, starting in 1968. So after the semis, we're in the finals. So we're going to see if Bobby Hull, Stan Mikita, Kenny Warham, and Doug Moens can bring the Hawks up over the Habs and advance to the finals. Let's see what happens here. In the series opener at the Montreal Forum, it looks like it may have been a smoke show. Yvon Cornway had 2 goals, including a power play goal, which was Montreal's fourth so far in the playoffs, and he also had an assist. John Ferguson scored 2 goals, including the game winner, less than 10 minutes into the game, as Montreal blew past Chicago with a 9-2 score. Boy, oh boy, they are clicking. They're 5-0 so far in the playoffs, and Worsley made 32 saves for the win. He is playing more than well enough so far. Definitely, absolutely, with that kind of offense. In game two, Jean Beliveau must have had a game to remember as he had a hat trick along with 2 power play goals and the game winner and an assist, and Montreal won 4-1. The score is getting tighter there for Chicago, but boy, oh boy, they didn't have an answer for Beliveau, the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. And Worsley made 23 saves for the win. Montreal now has 7 power play goals in 6 games. It is clicking. It needs to be stopped if you're gonna think of stopping these guys from advancing to the finals. In game three, the series shifted over to Chicago Stadium. Cornway scored 2 goals, including a power play. That's their 8th now in the playoffs. And the game winner, Montreal won 4-2. So, yeah, Chicago's getting closer here, but boy, oh boy, just not close enough. Worsley must have shut the door as he had 39 saves. 39 saves out of the 41 shots against. Chicago needs to take it one game at a time here, as their backs are up against the wall here. In game four, Bobby Hull scored 2 goals, including the shorthanded game winner, and Chicago did it. They did win 2-1. Uh, really shut down their defensive hockey well. Denny DeJordy made 28 saves for the win for Chicago. After answering the bell, Montreal and Chicago skate into overtime in game five. Jacques Lemaire, he scored the second of the night and gave Montreal a 4-3 win. So Montreal is off to the finals again and are hungry to win the cup this year. So far, the Habs have 9 power play goals in 9 games and have an 8-1 record. They are doing well here in Montreal. They're looking to raise the cup high again. So, on the other side of the coin in the finals, it was the St. Louis Blues. Incredibly, Red Berenson was the only 20 goal scorer on the team during the season. He had 22. A couple of defensemen, though, that you would need to watch out for who could still nail you in the corner are Barclay Plager or Noah Picard. Couple of rough defensemen there. In their first round, they played the Philadelphia Flyers. In Game 7, Laird Keenan scored his third of the series and the game winner as the Blues won 3-1. Glenn Hall had 26 saves, and the Blues had 6 power play goals in 7 games. So that was clicking for them. In the second round, they faced off against the Minnesota North Stars. It went 7 games, and 4 of them went into overtime. It must have been a real good series. Lots of hockey going on there. It was Ron Schock who scored the game winner in double overtime to win 2-1, and the Blues were off to the finals in their first year in the NHL. What a way to do it. Glenn Hall had 44 saves, and I'm guessing who was hopefully the first star of that game. Through 14 games, St. Louis had 9 power play goals. So there you have it. So it's Montreal against St. Louis in the finals. And I imagine people were just probably proclaiming the Habs the champs the second this series started. St. Louis definitely had some great talent there, like Glenn Hall in net, but one man can only do so much in hockey. It takes a team, and I'm not saying the rest of them weren't good, but they're facing one of the greatest teams of all time. Put together the Montreal Canadiens of the late '60s. Looking to continue winning Stanley Cups. But remember, Scotty Bowman was the coach. And remember, the Blues were, as I said, not filled with terrible players. They still had Hall in net. And the series was much tighter than you would think it would be. In the opener, it was in fact in St. Louis, which is odd. Lemaire scored the game winner early in overtime. So it took overtime to do it, and Montreal won 3-2. A tight score there. Hall had 35 saves for St. Louis, and Worsley had 34 for Montreal. So it was a very tight game to start the series. In game two, we had a real defensive game, but rookie Serge Savard scored the shorthanded game winner, and Montreal won 1-0. So St. Louis, they're really doing their darndest here to shut down this Montreal offense. Although he lost, Hall made 35 saves in keeping his team close. So after Montreal lost the first 2 games at home, they're going to Montreal Forum. This is going to be really tough for them, and real work was ahead. It took game three. It took overtime once again for Bobby Rousseau to score the game winner, and Montreal wins it 4-3. Hall, once again, he kept it close and still made 42 saves in the loss. With St. Louis, their backs are against the wall. Like Montreal is doing this to everyone they are playing this in this playoff. They had to try and chip away at these halves, whatever they could do. In game four, it was J.C. Tremblay. He scored the game winner and had an assist, and Montreal won 3-2. Montreal ended up sweeping through the St. Louis Blues to win the 1968 Stanley Cup. And boy, oh boy, their record in the playoff was 12-1. They were taking no prisoners. They really did an amazing job. It was only 3 rounds, but they went 12-1. So for the Habs, both of them and Beliveau, they both had 7 goals to lead the team. Cornway had 8 assists and 14 points in the 13 games. Cornway and Beliveau, they both had 3 power play goals. It was Serge Savard, who led the Habs, and the rest of the league. He had 2 shorthanded goals in these playoffs. And you bet it was Ferguson who led the squad with 25 PIMs. So there you go. So, as I wrote here as well, as a Leaf fan, if you wish, you can blame the NHL for the Maple Leafs not making the playoffs in this season. But it was set up for the new guys to get in the playoffs to try and um, expand the look of the NHL in these new areas. So, yeah, sorry, it does make sense. that you're going to have four teams that have never been there before making the playoffs this year. But the Leafs had the fifth best record out of 12 teams, and they didn't make the playoffs. Um, yeah, so if you went with, say, a system that people became used to in hockey, well, definitely started in the 90s there with the top eight teams, 1, 8, 2, 7, like that kind of thing. The Leafs would have played the Chicago Blackhawks. And who knows what would have happened there. You may look at it and say the Leafs would lose, but so many times in the 60s, when it came to the playoffs, the Leafs came from behind and won Stanley Cups. I am not for a second saying if they made the playoffs here, they would win the Stanley Cup. I think Montreal, they went 12-1. If Toronto played them, they may not have won a game. Um, I'm more confident in saying that than I am in saying that the Leafs would have upended the Montreal Canadiens, perhaps. This was Montreal's year. They were really clicking. They had talent up and down their lineup. They were looking good. Um, Interesting to note, if it was 1 through 8 in the first round, it would have been the Montreal Canadiens playing the St. Louis Blues. So there you have it. But yeah, in the end, though, the Leafs knew how tough it was going to be, and they weren't good enough to make the cut in a super tricky East Division in the 1967-68 season. But no fret, don't worry. They got a good squad. Um, as I just said, they had the fifth best record out of 12 teams. Keep it up. It's okay. The NHL is going to keep expanding, and the divisions will change and everything like that. Don't worry. I'm still confident in this team. So, anyways, that was it, and good job for Montreal. They won the 1968 Stanley Cup. So yeah, there we go. The next video, I believe it's a trade I'm going to look at before not long after the Stanley Cup was handed out. But yeah, if you like this video, don't be afraid to hit like. I would appreciate it. Or you could subscribe. I'd appreciate that as well. Or check out my channel and the other videos I have on here about the Toronto Maple Leafs and why they haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. And of course, if you want to comment on anything, you can do so. And that'd be cool too. We could talk some hockey. But anyways, until next time, go Leafs, go!